This is the best men's hockey team in Penn State history. The only thing that's standing in their way is the pressure of these expectations.
You are Locked On Nittany Lions, your daily podcast on the Penn State Nittany Lions. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download the FanDuel app today. That is right. You are locked on to Penn State men's hockey, and thank you so much for making Locked On Nittany Lions your first listen and watch every single day, your daily source for all things Penn State sports. My name is Zach Seyko, and I am your host of the show, credentialed media member for both Penn State football and Penn State wrestling. But we talk Penn State hockey on this show, and to get that expert angle for it, we welcome back radio announcer, men's hockey radio announcer, Eric Ohlson, to just give this overview for the season. So this is just part one of our discussions to preview this team, what they bring to the ice. So we're going to talk about the season in depth, the schedule, what to look forward to, why goaltending could be an issue as a camp battle is going to emerge here, but to know everything about this team, generally speaking, because there is so much star power with the additions of Gavin McKenna, Luke Misa, as well as Jackson Smith, just to name a few players that are just phenomenal NHL prospects, but then also with the additions of Matt Godowski, who is the son of head coach Guy Godowski, already with the talent that they were able to retain from last season, making a Frozen Four appearance. So Eric, this is definitively the best team in Penn State men's hockey program history. But it starts with Gavin McKenna being that bona fide generational talent as a number one overall pick.
Yeah, on paper, it certainly shakes out to be, the best team they've had talent wise. Finally get a first round pick on the team with Jackson Smith, and then we know what Gavin McKenna will be next year in the draft, the presumptive number one overall pick. Which is pretty fun to say. So on paper, it definitely shakes out to be the most talent they've had. Certainly teams in the past have had tons of talent. This is just at a different level in terms of expectation, draft status and all of that. So, we talked many times about how the CHL door was going to open up a whole new pool of prospects to recruit from, and Penn State dove into the deep end with that, got pretty aggressive going out and getting guys. Luke Misa, Shea Van Olm is going to be one heck of a player. He can score. And then they have guys coming, next year too. So they have really hit the ground running on the recruiting trail for CHL players. And I mean, to get Gavin McKenna, that was the prize of all prizes in the off season, and Penn State was able to beat out other teams, and couldn't land Porter Martone. He ends up going to Michigan State after.
It'll make for more of a fun rivalry, though.
It'll be
right?
fun. It'll be fun. There's just
fun.
that crazy sequence of Isaac Howard getting traded in the NHL, so leaves Tampa, gets traded to Edmonton, signs. And then all of a sudden, Michigan State has a hole. Its best player is gone. And I think everyone could kind of see there, like, Martone, the Flyers hadn't really made a decision yet with what he was going to do. And he'd been linked to Penn State for so long, of course. And I think after that point, everyone was like, Michigan State's going to go all in and try to get him. And they did. So they
had to at that point.
Yeah, they have their big fish now. He's a great player. So it'll be really fun to see those two guys compete against each other. And it's shaking out to be a great team. And you still have to deliver. That's the thing about hockey. And we talked so many times that you've had great teams in college hockey in the past that have not won national championships. And I know the way Guy runs the program, they're not talking about that at all. You can't. It's a long season. It's a grueling season. You can only take it one game at a time. And they proved that last year, what you can do when you just focus on what's immediately in front of you. And you can win a lot of hockey games doing that. So many talented teams did not make the Frozen Four last year. Penn State has had teams that came awfully close. I was going back and looking at some stats before we jumped on this, and I was looking at, goal scoring and like goal differential and all that. The 2018-2019 team is the best scoring team Penn State's ever had. Mm-hmm. They averaged 4.5 goals per game, which is just an absurd number. You'd expect teams of recent history, your Michigans, Denvers, they've put up goal numbers like that. Yeah. But the 18-19 team was just ridiculous at scoring, but they gave up quite a bit. They were giving up well over 3 goals per game. So now we go to the next season, 2019-2020. They really ratcheted down defensively. Peyton Jones in his senior year had an unbelievable season. The goal scoring came down, but with it, the goals against dropped as well. So that year, the team was only averaging about 3.5 goals per game. So we're looking at almost a goal drop per game.
Yeah.
But they dropped the goals against by about a goal as well. So scoring 3.5, only giving up about 2.5. And that was the team that won the regular season for the first time in the Big Ten. And unfortunately never got the chance to go on a tournament run. Probably a team that was going to make the Frozen Four. That's how good they were playing and how much talent they had on offense and defense, and Jones playing phenomenally in net. So I think the potential of this team this year is going to be hearkening back to what that 1920 team had and never got to accomplish in the end.
And so we mentioned the star prospects initially because that, I think, is what is going to it raises the floor, but it also raises the ceiling too for this Penn State team. So why they can match that level that the 1920 team had missed out on because of unfortunate circumstances, the star power that comes in gives you that, but it's also the returning nucleus. Okay. So it's not that Gavin McKenna and company are kind of, it's a passing of the torch, so to speak. No, it's a combining of forces because you have that trio and then some other complementary players that just don't get as much notoriety because McKenna is a top overall prospect, potentially, obviously, Jackson Smith and Luke Misa here. But let's think about the returners too. Aiden Fink, Charlie Serrato, who was just a second-round pick in his own right in the most recent NHL draft, JJ Weebush, and Matt DeMarsico. I mean, Eric, it's going to be tough to project what Penn State ultimately, it's going to be a chemistry issue early on, but you got to figure out which line gives you the best at each level, your first line, your second line, your third line. But Penn State really doesn't have a wrong answer at the end of the day. Speak to the nucleus that they're bringing back because they are battle tested. They know what it takes to get to this Frozen Four.
Yeah, I think any team in the country would love to be returning what Penn State is returning, just at a minimum. And then you add in all the guys that they are, and that's why there's so much excitement, right? It's so much scoring and talent that has come back. And you mentioned so many of those guys. You throw in a great depth guy like Dane Dowiak, who can he's an animal on the ice. He can do everything for you. He can score, kill penalties, win faceoffs. He plays a 200-foot game. He's arguably one of the most valuable guys Penn State has. He might not score 20 goals a season, but you need players like him. So he's great. Keaton Peters, so good at winning faceoffs, killing penalties as well. So you don't want to be too top heavy because we've seen Michigan, who was loaded with first round draft picks, and go out and score 6 goals like it was nothing.
Yeah.
But they didn't win a national championship because they didn't have those gritty depth, just grinded out players. No. So hockey's so much about finding that balance. And we saw the team have some of that balance last year and maybe just missing out a little bit on that top end scoring to really get them over the hump. Now they have that this year, and depth coming back on defense, so much talent to add a Matt Godowski in the transfer portal, a Hobie Baker, top 10 finalist on defense is outstanding. Add Jackson Smith and the talent that he's going to bring to the ice. Nolan Collins coming in, a great defender as well. And then you return Amon, Crespo, Fascia, Shade coming back from injury.
Yes.
Like Penn State's got some guys, and you don't quite know who's going to play with who yet. It's a great problem to have.
Is it fair to say if we had to predict the first line, it would be Fink, Serrato, and McKenna? Is that fair?
Um, it's an option, I think.
Okay.
I've been going back and forth with people like, oh, who centers that line? Because they have depth at center now too that they haven't necessarily had in the past. So do you keep Serrato, DeMarco, and Wiebusch together because they just clicked
because of the chemistry? Yeah.
So it's like, do you do that, or do you move Serrato up and down? Lawback, who not as strong winning faceoffs as Serrato or Dowiak, but is really good down the middle. Is there a spot for him down the middle, or does he need to go to the wing? Can he provide another element to the game there? So it's going to be a lot of those mixing and matching, trying to find the puzzle pieces that fit together best, in training camp, preseason stuff coming up. And then certainly the month of October is going to be a lot of feeling out, I think, what lines really mesh well together and what gives you that depth of balance. You don't want to have three lines that are just going to go out and score and can't defend. You got to have that balance. So I think that's what the coaching staff is going to be looking at. Again, great problem to have, not really knowing who's going to play where, who plays with Gavin McKenna. But I really think the makeup of this team sets up to have that balance that really good hockey teams need.
Offense is just one element of all of this, but initially, early on, I think Penn State could get into some shootouts as they find their defensive identity, particularly at goaltending. So there's going to be a battle here between two prospects that come in. One's a veteran, one's a little more unknown, uncertain, but Penn State's going to have a new goaltender after Arseny Sergeyev moves on after doing a phenomenal job in goaltending, getting this team to the Frozen Four. So we're going to talk about what Penn State's goaltending outlook looks like next here on Locked On Nittany Lions. And this episode is brought to you by DoorDash. It's almost the weekend, time to look back and crown this week's MVP on Who Delivered, powered by DoorDash. Just like you can win every Saturday with DoorDash Streaks, saving more every time you order, these players delivered when it mattered most. Let's break it down. For Penn State, I'm going to go with Tony Rojas, and honestly Amari Campbell as well. They delivered in a big way. Both linebackers were flying around the football field against Villanova. They were also leading the team in tackles. Tony Rojas had 2 sacks in that game. Amari Campbell also had tackles for loss as well, 3 of them. So these guys were making an impact for Penn State right out of the gate in this game against Villanova. So no hesitation, no delay. When the pressure was on, they delivered. And if you've been watching week after week, you know these performances were not a fluke. And just like Tony Rojas and Amari Campbell delivered for Penn State, DoorDash delivers your Saturdays. With DoorDash Streaks, you can save every Saturday you order, stack it up all season long, and you could save up to $250, including $100 in DoorDash credits. Order this Saturday. Keep the streak alive. Fuel your game day only with DoorDash. Terms apply. Promo period through November 18th. And this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app for anything: NFL football, college football, baseball, basketball, you name it. All on FanDuel. FanDuel is great because it makes every game more exciting. Whether you're watching your favorite team or you're just keeping an eye on your fantasy lineup, it's quick, it's easy, it's the best way to add a little more energy to your Sundays, as well as your Saturdays too. So you can bet on Penn State football, Steelers, Eagles, again, NFL as I mentioned. And if you are new to FanDuel, are you ready to play? Because right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if that first bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use all across the app. You can download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. Again, that is FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. So the battle's going to come down to 2 players. Kevin Raidler, who transfers in from Omaha, and he was actually drafted by the Ottawa Senators in the 5th round. So this is probably the player that I look to, Eric, as someone who's going to take over at the number 1 spot, or at least should be in this, the lead theoretically for this battle. But I'm not going to discount Josh Fleming, because at one point in time, he was a team MVP. .908 save percentage on a team that just allowed a lot of shots on goal. So this is somebody that's used to being peppered back in the goal and knows how to save a shot here. So these are the two guys that are going to be looked to primarily. And even if they rotate early in the season, I don't think we're going to get that solid starter until later on. What are you expecting as far as how responsibilities will be divvied up? Is it, hey, expect Raidler like I'm saying over here, or is it really a 50-50 battle where Josh Fleming has just as good of a chance as Raidler does?
I think right now it's up in the air. I haven't been to any preseason practices, so I haven't seen what the guys look like on the ice. They're countable hours, I believe, just started last week. So, that ramp up time is starting to happen. And that's when you're really going to get to see, coaches can be involved in practice on the ice now. They can get a feel for the goaltending situation. And, associate head coach Giuliano Pagliaro, who was a goaltender at Niagara, this is his department. This is his expertise. He's been great at recruiting goalies and identifying, he identified Sergeyev right away as a guy they need to go get from UConn. Same when, with Kevin transferring from Omaha, he was a big part of recruiting Fleming. So he knows what's up with the goalies for sure. You could probably give the edge towards Kevin right now just because he's played some college hockey at Omaha. But a bunch of things could happen between now and the first weekend in October when they open up with Arizona State. So it's hard to tell who is going to get the net to start. But I would expect in the month of October, we will see both guys play because you want to certainly, if it is Kevin's net to start, you certainly want to get Fleming some time in those non-conference games that Penn State will have at home in October. So he gets his feet wet with college hockey because you never know when a goaltender is going to go down and you need next man up.
Your depth. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. So I think we will see both goalies in October. And that's the best that I can predict right now. I know they are high on both for sure. Fleming comes in with a really good background, and then, Kevin in the small amount of games he has played so far, looked pretty good, and his numbers are good. So I think they are confident with what they have in goaltending. And you mentioned it, like Sergeyev was outstanding last year.
Yes.
And I believe that they don't feel like it's going to be much of a drop off, if any, in net with what they have right now.
And Sergeyev went through the same kind of upbringing, so to speak, where unknown, had to prove himself, and then eventually had settled in. What can really help a goaltender, and it's not that I need to say this, especially for the hockey experts that are tuning in, but your defensive line can make your job, make or break your job. They can make your day a lot more difficult, or they can make it a lot more easy. They can make it a lot easier. So when I look at the defensive line of what Penn State's going to do initially, obviously Jackson Smith is going to be someone that should be a starter right out of the gate on that defensive line. I imagine he would pair nicely with Matt Godowski. That's kind of the assumption here. Nolan Collins gets into the upper rotation, so to speak. So what would be kind of the best pairing, or what's your expectation for them? Because it's not really I'm not worried about the offensive chemistry as much as I am with the defensive chemistry. So that back line, the defenseman in conjunction with a goalie, whether that's Fleming or it's Raidler.
Yeah, I think we certainly could see Smith and Godowski play together. It also wouldn't be surprise me if they get split up, and you try to find the perfect balance. You could go top heavy with your number one pair with those two, as long as they gel together, because you don't necessarily want to have two great offensive guys out on the ice at the same time if you get caught in a situation where you have to defend. And you're defending as a 5-man unit in your own end. So it's on the forwards too. It's not just the two defensemen out there at one time. Right. So we could see that. Amon and Shade played a lot together last year. There's Crespo there. There's Fascia, Collins as well. Christensen, we don't have an update on him right now with his injury that he sustained over the summer. Didn't make it to Penguins camp over the summer, or development camp. So don't know what his availability will be. But yeah, I think, again, lots of good pieces on defense, and the next couple of weeks they'll be testing things out. And opening up with Arizona State, certainly not easy. Like, you're going to get tested out there on the road. So that's a team that just came up short of making the tournament last year. And I think starting with them is pretty good, to go out and just get tested right away and see what your makeup of this team is. They opened up on the road at Alaska last year and got tested a bit. Had to go to overtime in the first game, and Simon Mack scored the game winner. So, going on the road is a pretty good way to start a season, I think, especially when you have some things you need to figure out with your team, and just get some good team chemistry with an opening road trip.
Also, something that'll really help your goaltending is building the confidence by having a 3, 4, 5 goal lead. So the offense, you want to play complementary hockey, and if your offense is able to just absolutely annihilate an opposing defense, then a goaltender can really settle in, regardless if it's Raidler or if it's Fleming. But this battle is definitely a storyline to watch as we go through training camp. We get some early impressions of the team and the actual start of the season, Eric, like you mentioned, against Arizona State, which is a perfect segue, because opening weekend, October 3rd and 4th, Arizona State, Penn State is going to be on the road there, which is definitely a test. Their non-conference schedule, aside from that, is relatively easy, but then Big Ten conference play, the gauntlet that Penn State will have to go through to prove itself, including an outdoor hockey game at Beaver Stadium. What you should expect from this schedule, that is on the way next here on Locked On Nittany Lions. And this episode is brought to you by Mazda. Mazda crafts cars for those who do more than simply move. Mazda delivers confidence with every ride, with more IIH Top Safety Pick Plus awards than anyone else. From footwork to breath work, athletes sweat all the details. Mazda brings the same intention to how we craft every model. You can make everyday drives feel like anything but, from smooth handling to intuitive controls. With all-wheel drive standard in every crossover SUV, you can drive with confidence through almost any season. Like our players, we sweat every detail, because when you make every move count, impossible becomes irrelevant. Mazda. Move and be moved. Eric, we started to break down the schedule. Arizona State to open up the season on the road with that series, and then you have your home opener against Clarkson. Routinely, they play Long Island, so this isn't anything new on the schedule. Stonehill, RIT, and then 4 straight Big Ten road games, and then later on in the season, potentially a number 1 versus number 2 battle in Beaver Stadium. If you are missing this one, you got to find a way to be there, because I think this is a lifetime experience, and hopefully Penn State does this once a year, where Penn State and Michigan State will match up in Beaver Stadium at the end of January. So that's some of what to look forward to. Let's just, if somebody comes up to you, Eric, and says, hey, what stands out to you about this schedule? Is it that outdoor game that could be a 1 versus 2 battle? Is it starting the Big Ten slate consecutively on the road like that, at Ohio State and at Michigan State? As great as the Beaver Stadium game is, from just the, it's not routine. It's a one of a kind type of situation. If we're talking about the logistics of it, I gotta say, starting on the road like that in Big Ten conference play with some new young talent that hasn't really been battle tested at the college level.
Yeah, it's going to be a tough start for sure, and then you get to come home for a few weeks, which will be good. A non-conference slate in October that certainly shapes up that you have to win. And that tends to be the way Penn State schedules right now. It's that back and forth of, do you schedule good, like really good non-conference opponents to test your team and grow from that? Or do you schedule some opponents that could still test you, but you have a better chance of winning because of how dangerous and tough the Big Ten is? And right now, with the way college hockey is, winning is the most important thing. Like, that's what the pairwise counts the most.
Yeah.
So you could go 34-0, and you could play the worst teams in the country, but if you go 34-0, you're going to make the tournament. The way the mathematical formula plays out, when you're playing really good opponents and you lose, doesn't necessarily hurt you in the beginning of the season, but it can hurt you towards the end of the season. So that's the game you're playing when it comes to scheduling. So opening up with Arizona State, going to be really tough. They would love to sweep, of course. A split is not the end of the world. You just don't want to get swept, because you get swept, yes, that could really hurt you in the end. And then it really puts pressure on the rest of your non-conference. So I think if Penn State can get through non-conference at 9-1 at a minimum, they're in a really good spot. Home and home with RIT. They're at the end of December, beginning of January. And then every other game outside of Arizona State's at home. So, pretty good non-conference slate, I think. Beaver Stadium's going to be awesome. 6 of the 7 Big Ten teams got to experience an outdoor game last year, Penn State being one of them in Chicago.
Yes.
So a lot of those guys will have that experience of playing outdoors. I hope it's a little bit warmer than it was at Wrigley, than it was that night, because it was cold. But January 31st in State College, you don't know what you're going to get. But it should be really fun. I hope it kind of gets, the night treatment, get some fireworks going, a little bit of whiteout energy maybe in Beaver. It should be tons of fun. And I know a lot of those guys are going to be super excited to get that experience that haven't before. So some of those newcomers. So that'll be really exciting. Of course, Michigan State will be a great matchup. So it'll be a showcase for fans. And then the rest of the Big Ten is what it is. You know what you're going to get. It's a gauntlet. It's a grind. I think there's balance right now because they'll have 3 road trips in the Big Ten in the first half, 3 in the second half. But you got to go back-to-back Ohio State, Michigan State on the road to start. Not going to be easy by any means. Not that there's an easy weekend in the Big Ten at all. So,
well, and 3 out of the 4 series are, and so I talk about back-to-back series being on the road. 3 out of the first 4 for Penn State in that Big Ten conference slate are on the road, because then you return home and then you go back on the road to Minnesota. Yep. And Minnesota's out looking for revenge, right? Because Penn State had real phenomenal end of the season, which put them in position to really secure a spot in addition to Big Ten tournament play. But I just think overall, there's people are going to have collectively, because Penn State's the odds-on favorite to win a national title. The Big Ten is going to be extremely unforgiving. They're going to go after Penn State with every bit of energy they can. Whether it's Michigan State, whether it's Notre Dame, some of those other Big Ten teams that it's really in any given night in the Big Ten, Eric, just because, for example, once upon a time, Michigan State was at the bottom of the Big Ten conference and then they solved everything. And then Wisconsin sometimes will be closer to the bottom of the Big Ten. But as we saw in the Big Ten tournament, they can make a push and really surprise you if you're not careful.
Yeah, that's why I think the Big Ten is the best conference in hockey, because there is no ceiling, there is no basement, because on any given night you can win, you can lose. There's other conferences where you have so many more teams that you're naturally going to get some of that separation, where there is a ceiling of that upper echelon of teams, and then there's kind of is that basement of teams that are just struggling a bit. And you mentioned it, there were those years that Michigan State was bad, but they had the KHL line. And they were single-handedly winning games for Michigan State. Years that Wisconsin was bad, and then they get Cole Caulfield, and they have a couple of really good seasons with him. So the conference ebbs and flows. Every team dipped into the CHL pool. Notre Dame. So
collectively, this conference should be a lot better.
Well, yeah, I don't know if I would say a lot better, but there's certainly no drop-off in talent. Notre Dame's in a new era now. Jeff Jackson retiring. So new head coach. I know they went out and were pretty aggressive in the portal and, bringing in some really good talent. So they're going to be a step above what they were last year. And that's still a team that was a goal away basically from going to the Big Ten championship. So the Big Ten's just crazy. And that's why you're going to get tested every weekend in that conference. So it's always a ton of fun. certainly adds some stress to the games, but you want to play great hockey, you come to the Big Ten for sure. And I think that's why Penn State was partially so attractive to some of these players, that you can come and develop at Penn State and play big boy hockey and prepare for the NHL. And that's what the Big Ten does for you. So it's certainly not going to be easy. Starting out with 2 series on the road, not easy by any means. So it's going to be a test. And that's why the month of October is super important for Penn State to get up to speed with what they want to do before Big Ten play comes.
And over the course of the preseason, the season itself, we're going to break it all down here on Locked On Nittany Lions. And a big thank you to Eric Ohlson, as always. He is the radio announcer for part of the Penn State men's hockey broadcast team. So that's where you can hear him, his analysis, his coverage of the team throughout the season. Thank you to each and every one of you for joining us on this episode as an early look at this Penn State men's hockey team and what they can do. Thank you to the everydayers. If you are not an everydayer, become one. Subscribe to the YouTube channel and wherever you get your podcasts for all conversations around your favorite Penn State sports teams. I'm your host, as always, Zach Seyko. Once again, Eric, thank you so much for the time, and can't wait to pick back up with this, because this will truly be one of the most exciting seasons in program history for all the right reasons. Eric, thank you again for the time.
Yeah, of course. Just a few more weeks to go.